Tiho, looking forward to talking to you.
Yes, he's self-muted. He's not muted from our side.
Okay. So yeah.
Oh,
okay. Hello.
There you go.
I apologize.
Okay.
Yeah. I clicked the right button. My voice is also deep, so maybe I should have stayed unmuted actually.
No, it's great to hear you and nice to meet you, Tiho. So really appreciate during this holiday period where a lot of people are just, calling it a year until next week, that you would take the time to address our community. So thank you very much, buddy.
Not a problem at all.
Okay, so I'm
pleasure.
on your blog. I'm on your blog right here, and the first few words say that you're a successful trader. Let's start off with what do you trade, Tiho?
Well, actually, maybe that's a little bit of a wrong word to use, but I have been a trader before. I'm actually an investor. I think a trader is somebody, let's say, who has more of a focus on short term, which is what I had in my 20s. Now being in my 30s, I'm more of an investor. So what I trade, what a wonderful question that is. I don't think there is an asset class that I haven't traded just yet. Maybe you want to ask me a few questions about that.
Okay, so that includes crypto. You've been involved in positioning in crypto?
Well, I think a lot of my followers don't know this, but I did buy a cryptocurrency called Ripple. I think it was in end of October, early November, and it was similar to what your previous guest, I think, was discussing. Even though his charts had so many lines, I couldn't understand half the things that were happening there. But I had a triangle on Ripple, and I ended up buying around 22 cents, and it's gone up by 6 times. I've never seen movements like this before, and cryptocurrencies are very interesting. Usually my clients and the people that I work with don't have a lot of interest. I work with high net worth individuals, ultra high net worth individuals sometimes as well. They usually have their own structures.
What are their phone numbers?
Maybe the better question is what are the phone numbers of their girlfriends?
Well, I don't think you have any problem in that arena. So, I think that it's interesting. You still are, a young man, 30s is, you're in your heyday, and that, you believe in being a global citizen. When I was your age, I would read guys like Harry Schultz and Doug Casey, and I still read Doug Casey, who's sitting on a mountaintop in Argentina.
Yes, I read
being prepared. Yeah, being prepared for, some type of reset or unwind of the fractional banking system. Looking into 2018 with everything you see happening across the globe, what areas of the world are catching your eye and your attention? Let's go to your bailiwick and talk about different regions or countries.
Okay, so basically to answer that question, I'm a huge fan of Southeast Asia. I actually have investments in Southeast Asia, in particular in Vietnam. I also have some structures in places like Hong Kong and Singapore for tax reasons. As you said, I'm a global citizen, so I heavily focus on offshore. I focus on citizenship. I have 4 passports, so I'm quite lucky in that regard as well. I've traveled over, I think, 85 countries now, and I've invested in real estate on 3 continents. To answer your question of before, what do I invest in? So mainly stocks, real estate in the form of REITs, as well as direct real estate. I've done commercial real estate on a smaller scale by buying certain parts of it with other co-investing. I've done luxury real estate and renovation, which is what my family specializes in for the last 25 years. And I invest in bonds, both government bonds and credit. I invest in gold. I invest in other form of raw materials, including MLPs, timber, forestry, agriculture, farmland. And I've also invested in private equity, venture capital, and I own a decent amount of collectibles, and so do my clients. So it's kind of like a family office kind of a portfolio, very diversified. We do equities, we do fixed income, we do commodities, we'll do alternative assets. Some of them are very liquid, so you can sell them in a minute, like your previous guest was talking about, which we don't really do. And some of them are also long-term bets where the capital is locked up for 3 to 5 years. Investments, for example.
Have there been any shift in any long-term bets based upon the quote-unquote sweeping tax legislation here out of the U.S.? And what do you make of?
Not that much, actually. Tax-wise, I think what Donald Trump is trying to do, I'm not sure how much he's going to be able to achieve and whether his timing is right. I think the timing for the tax cuts is a little bit strange. But having said that, I'm always pro-tax cut. The timing, however, is a little bit off, in my opinion. If you were a student of history and you would look at the 1920s, the roaring bull market, and the valuations in the United States are now very similar to 1929 based on price to book, CAPE ratios, even much higher with the equities to GDP ratio. But Calvin Coolidge was the president. He famously, in 1928, was very optimistic, and he was constantly discussing the stock market. It reminds me of Donald Trump's Twitter today. And surprisingly, if you look at history, and I'm a huge student of history, that's how I get my analytics and analysis for most of the asset classes. Calvin Coolidge was actually a pro-business and a tax cutter.
Exactly.
So, yeah, so, you know, and equities are very, very highly valued. So I wonder if history, as Mark Twain said, it doesn't repeat, but I wonder if it's going to rhyme here. And, you know, we're up 9 years in a row. Last time we were up 9 years in a row was in 2000. And then we had 2000, 2001, and 2002 with down years in the tech crash. And the last time we were up 8 years in a row was during the roaring 20s. And 1929 was the first down year. So now we're up 9 years in a row as well. And, you know, equities in America are looking very overvalued. And I think cutting taxes right here might push the economy to grow next year. I'm always pro tax cuts. I am more of a liberal person in a sense, and I believe that sales taxes, as we call it in Australia, where I'm from, GST, or in Europe, VAT, is probably a more smarter and efficient way for governments to run the tax.
It rewards savers.
Correct, exactly right. And,
all right.
And at the same time, I wanted to say as well that you know, my clients, majority of them being from Europe and Asia Pacific, they employ very, very expensive people, very intelligent people to find loopholes in whatever the government designs. So having a flat tax rate, I think, is a very, very smart, you know, policy to have as well. And I think having brackets like we do in the Western world, whether it's Australia, the UK, United States, and so forth, I just don't think it's very smart, because at the end it benefits the very wealthy, even though it benefits me too, because I work with these people, and the more money I make and save for them, the higher they pay me. But nonetheless, I'm an honest person, and I have to say that.
Did you have any investments in India when Modi went to a cashless type system by eliminating certain notes overnight?
No, I don't have any investments in India, and I didn't have any investments back then. I'm optimistic on India in the very long term. As a matter of fact, I'm optimistic on the whole monsoon region, as I would call it, and I spend a large amount of time there. If you look at the cities that are really booming and are going to boom in the next 5 to 10 years, and this was recently actually reported by Bloomberg, New Delhi is at the top, and the second fastest growing city in the whole region here where I am is Saigon, or Ho Chi Minh City. So I have investments in Ho Chi Minh City. India, however, is a bit of a mess for me, and very bureaucratic and difficult to do things for foreigners, in my opinion, unless you have the right partner. And I have the right partner in Vietnam. I don't have the right partnership in India yet, and I do play India with, let's say, publicly listed assets. And right now, the stock market in India is a little bit too expensive. It's at the same level as when it comes to price to earnings multiples, as we saw in the year 2000, 2007, okay, end of 2010, and today. And if you have a look at those charts, Dale, every single one of those years corresponds with some type of a meaningful top, or at least a sideways action for several years. So no, I don't want to own in India right now, actually.
And you said that do you own gold as a hedge, or do you have some viewpoint as far as price potential? And you know, most people would say, you know, maybe you have 5% in your portfolio in gold. Is that the way you look at it? And do you do it through mining shares, or tell people to take physical possession, or have it stored at a bank and hope the bank will let them in the door if they need it?
Very good question. I don't invest based on hedges. I believe if you need a hedge, at that point in time, you shouldn't have a position on, as Stanley Druckenmiller would say. So I like to own gold when it's in an uptrend, and gold is currently not in an uptrend. Having said that, gold is also paused being in a downtrend too, because the low that was made in December 2015 and the strong rally that we've had has been making higher lows. So we kind of have a consolidation and indecision in gold. At the moment, I don't own any gold, apart from the physical gold that my clients have stored in places like Cayman Islands and especially Singapore, where we work with a very good company that's not a bank. It's a German company, and they have an incredible safe. They have insurance policies, and they're incredibly cheap for storing gold. While some of the gold storage facilities charge up to 1% or 0.5%, the costs with these people are incredibly low. So physical gold that we have is an insurance policy we never touch, but as a part of a portfolio, we like to be in gold or silver, but especially gold, whenever it's trending upwards. So, you know, I better start watching more of your F.A.C.E webinars so I can know exactly when it's going to start trending upwards. So I better buy some.
How about a preferred currency for your clients to keep their holdings in? Aussie has gotten pretty cheap. Kiwi got very cheap recently. We've had a recovery. Or is it euro or the US dollar? That's our bailiwick. What's your outlook for currency, and what would be your recommendation for people to hold most of their currency in?
Sure. Well, I'm a longer term investor, and that's the way that I run portfolios for my clients. We also measure performance in US dollars. Having said that, I only have one client in United States, and you know, that's his predominant currency, obviously, or currency of choice. Otherwise, for the European clients, it's euros, and they would switch to US dollars and hold US dollars cash until I say to change over. Now, we've been holding United States dollars in particular since 2013, and for my Asia Pacific clients, we've been shorting Australian dollars since 2012. Now, people who have followed me for a while before my Atlas Investor website, I used to have a blog called Short Side of Long, and that's where I used to disclose all of my trades before I started working with some more higher end clients, and I had to be a bit more private. But I still hold that trade. So I'm still been short the Aussie. I think for 6 years, I haven't touched that trade. I don't even look at it every day. Now
I've noticed. What are you looking for? 60 cents, 50 cents?
I don't actually have targets. I wish I was smart enough to figure out how targets work. I've given it my best shot for many, many years. I've been trading. I'm 34. I've been trading for 16 years. I've never found anything that works with targets for me on a consistent basis. So what I'm looking for usually is what I notice that works the best is some kind of outright panic. So when everybody's panicking and giving up on the Aussie and every hedge fund is shorting it, usually I think I'm going to cover and I'm going to buy it, you know, and the vice versa. So when I opened up a short on the Australian dollar,
how do you know that, Tiho? By what you read in the news? How do you know that? Or by the percentage drop would tell you that? What tells you that people are panicking out and signs of capitulation?
Of course. Well, it's what my mentor used to teach me as selling climax. A selling climax is when it really becomes front page in the news, when you look at the commitment of traders data and there's huge amount of short contracts. When you talk to people in the actual country and they're shaking their heads at the losses that they've made, and they're calling you up with the telephone and saying, get me out of my own currency, what do I diversify in? That's the time we're actually buying their currency.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So I have a selfish question. If I was considering relocating from the U.S. and you were advising me, where would you say to go?
Okay, so that question is very in-depth, and we will have to break it down based on what your goals in life were, what your age was, and which direction.
Okay.
So give me 3 different case scenarios, and we'll discuss it. Give me a young person, a middle-aged person with family, and an old retiree, for example.
Call me an old working guy.
Okay.
Do you have a classification for that? I'm not retired. I'm not retired.
You should never retire, as my father says. You should enjoy what you do, and you never have a day of work in your life.
Well, I don't know if you do retirement planning, but mine is to slump over on my keyboard.
Right. Well, you definitely love what you do then, Dale. That's excellent. That's great to hear.
All right, yeah.
So maybe, you know.
But, let me ask you this. With all the damage done by the hurricanes in the Caribbean, do you see any opportunities in the Caribbean, or do you think they're done, especially places like the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, that there aren't opportunities because they're so burdened with debt and infrastructure issues? It could take decades for them to come back. Why don't we start there?
Well, that's a great question, and I have investments in Egypt, and Egypt sounds just like Puerto Rico, actually. I have a friend of mine right now in Egypt who tells me that the infrastructure is a total mess. The country has huge amounts of poverty. Nothing works properly there, and the stock market is down a whole lot. And I was quite smart to be able to buy Egyptian ETF and recommended it to my clients, and that's up some 30%. I think the drawdown on that stock market is something like 70% from an all-time high, and down 10 years in a row, basically. Obviously, some up years in between, but from 2007, it's straight down. So I think you should look at least at buying something that's totally depressed. And, Puerto Rico is very interesting to me. There is a lot of contrarians now that I read that are kind of willing to go to Puerto Rico. They're thinking about lowering their taxes, especially the traders, people like Peter Schiff and John Paulson, who own big.
Well, they already have.
Exactly.
They did that before the hurricane to attract.
Yeah, well, timing is everything in this business, isn't it? And maybe I'm a big fan of Peter Schiff, but maybe his timing is not the best, though. Yeah, but having said that, everything does eventually come back. The question is of timing. And I think if you look at some great busts throughout history, especially places like Russia in 1998, maybe Argentina in 2001, and Mexico in the 80s and so forth, the time to buy is when they default on the government debt. And that's where Puerto Rico is right now. I think we're just about there, or we've already done that. They can't meet those obligations. And then the question is, what do you buy? What has limited downside and potential upside? Is it real estate that you allocate to? Is it, do you go and start a company down there? Do you go down there just for the sake of lowering your taxes? I'm not the biggest fan of Caribbean, because I just think that, generally speaking, Caribbean and Latin America don't have what it takes to become the next great country like United States has become, or British Empire before that, or the French Empire before that. If you look at all these, we had the Spanish Empire, the Italian city-states. If you study history going back 500 years, 600 years, there's always been a dominant power that kind of controlled the reserve currency, and also, first of all, flexed its economic might, and then eventually its military might, and became the leading social and cultural force of the world. The United States is still it. And, Virgin Islands, as you said, and Puerto Rico, they're kind of United States islands anyway. They might have different names, but this is United States territories. So where would I move if I was in my early 20s? Definitely towards Asia, definitely towards East, where demographics are very good. Places like Vietnam, like Laos, like Cambodia, Bangladesh, Myanmar, India. These are the places that are going to be booming. I went to New Delhi about 6 years ago, and I can't believe, I recently went again, I can't believe how different it looks after 5 years. Whenever you go to New York or London or Paris. And I just came off, I have to tell you, I just came off a 5-month travel trip through Southern Europe and also Eastern Europe, visiting over 15 countries with my girlfriend. I've invested in actual real estate there as well in one of the countries. And I looked at a lot of prospects, a lot of deals. And I tell you, Europe and the United States and Australia, majority of the time when 5 years pass by, they look very, very similar. So if I was very young, unfortunately, I'm not that young anymore, and I have a stable life now. But
yeah, you'd be going for emerging market countries.
Correct. That's the advice that I will give to very, very young people.
Okay. And when you're an old man like you at 34, what do you do then?
Older man? Well, I split my life very wonderfully between 3 continents. So I spent 6 months a year in my tax residency, and then I spent about 6 months a year traveling the world. And I predominantly mix pleasure and business, where business is I'm looking for opportunities, preferably direct investments and private investments, such as real estate, multifamily apartments to able to renovate them, or luxury real estate that's underpriced. And that takes a lot of time. So I spend time there, and then usually my girlfriend would enjoy herself. We would also have some fun, immerse ourselves in the culture. And that's the best way to do investing. I think that's the best way to learn about a place that you're visiting, to actually mingle with the locals.
On the ground.
On the ground, boots on the ground.
On the ground, boots on the ground, pressing the flesh. Tiho Brkan.
Yes, let me tell you how I did an investment in Eastern Europe. I'm not going to disclose the country where I did the investment, or the city, but basically I have 3 simple rules when it comes to investing in real estate. And this is not rocket science or anything like that. I'm looking, first of all, at a deal that's below market price. Very difficult to find in public markets. When the gentleman before was talking about the crosses between the euro and the US dollar and so forth, these are very efficient priced markets. They're ticking every second, and people are buying and selling them. In direct real estate or private real estate, I was able to find a deal where a developer had some issues with repaying his loan, and he was foreclosed through his renovation work on a beautiful building that's 150 years old in the center of an old city that dates back 600 years. And I was able to buy that property 25%, and also my client was too. We bought one apartment each, 25% below market value. Number 2, another rule is that there has to be an ability to force appreciate a property. In other words, renovate it or improve it. So even if the price goes down and you put a little bit of money in, you can renovate it and increase its value. So there's an opportunity here for us to renovate the apartments completely. And number 3, once you do that, you have the ability to gain some kind of cash flow, especially if you use leverage or debt or a mortgage to buy a property. You need cash flow to be able to service this and not to get into trouble. And I like 5% or higher gross rental yield. So I was able to achieve all these things. I purchased a property in a place that's the only European city out of all the major ones that's growing with tourism at double-digit rates. So there's a huge shortage of property happening there. Housing starts, and building permits are down since 2007. And basically there's no building going on. At the same time, prices are rising because there's a huge amount of demand and growing population, and in particular, huge booming tourism. And to be able to buy a property at 25% below market price, ability to renovate it, and then later maybe use it on Airbnb, or maybe just do a long-term lease and improve your cash flow. These are the 3 rules that I look for when I do, I guess, private investing of that sort.
Should I guess Bucharest?
No, it's close, but not Bucharest. Bucharest doesn't grow. I don't think Bucharest is one of the top visiting cities in Europe. So maybe when I said that, I gave it away a little bit. I'll give you a hint. It's Prague.
That's a good hint.
Yes,
that's a good.
So
basically, your girlfriend doesn't like to go there because I've heard the most beautiful women in the world.
That's what I want to say. Be honest. Did the real estate opportunities or the women attract you there?
Both of you are very, very funny. I can't disclose that because my girlfriend's the next door.
All right.
Okay. Well, look, so then you can disclose it. It's definitely the real estate if she's next door.
Correct. Exactly right.
Theo, well, really, I want to thank you for coming in and telling your story. I appreciate it. I'm glad I reached out to you on Twitter, and I don't think I have to wish you luck in 2018. I think you don't need a lot of luck. I think you've got the gift. But have a great 2018.
I hope so. And thank you so much for inviting me on your show. I mean, there is so much that we can talk about, and maybe we can do it again, because we only just scratched the surface. I mean, I'm so passionate about what I do, just as you guys are. And, you know, an interview can go on for 3 or 4 hours. I mean, my clients really enjoy having me at dinner tables. I'm very good friends with all of my clients, and good friends with their kids. And I'm like,
they're like
exactly. Exactly. And we sit around and talk about the world for a long time.
Okay, well, then you're my trading warrior brother now, and I'm going to come to you if I think about leaving the States and looking for a low-tax place to live and trade from sometime in the middle of the year. So,
and don't forget as well, the key is beautiful women too. I've heard from both of you guys. So it's not just all about taxes and trading.
I'm married to one.
Okay, that's excellent. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, gentlemen.
Happy New Year, Tiho. Everyone can follow you at Tiho Brkan, B-R-K-A-N, and the website is, I see Jim Rogers is one of your heroes or mentors.
Mentors.
The Atlas Investor, Tiho Brkan. Thank you so much, Tiho.
Bye-bye.
Happy New Year, buddy. That's it. We'll see you tomorrow. Remember, don't just count your pips, count your blessings. Adios, my trading warrior brothers and sisters. See you tomorrow for Thankful Thursday. You're very welcome. You're welcome. Adios.